Well, I'm deciding to get back and making some videos for the channel. I'm working on several things. And one of the things I had a lot of people subscribe to my channel to years ago was back 4 years ago when all these things started happening. I would make comments about it. And today in this video, we're going to talk about some of the things I've been seeing and some other people's work on YouTube about the protest at the Democratic National Convention. Now, those of us that are old enough to remember in 1968 what a three-ring circus it was, and I mean I remember that as a small child, because 6 o'clock and somebody brought this guy up, Walter Cronkite, 6 o'clock news. It's 6 o'clock, right about when my mom was getting dinner ready and my dad was coming home from work. I used to sit there, because we didn't have cable TV, we only had 3 channels with an antenna. I'd watch the 6 o'clock news. And I remember as a child watching the Vietnam War, the moon landing, Walter Cronkite, and that the rioting at the Democratic National Convention in I think it's 68. And I mean, they had some sort of federal police. They wore blue shirts, white helmets, I forget who the hell they were, and they just come out with nightsticks, and I mean, they bludgeoned the piss out of demonstrators and dragged them off. Okay? Our country was a different place. They didn't stand for that. Alright, so this guy does a video. I've been trying to keep up on it. And let me look here. The name of the video is... Okay, it's titled Inside America's Paid Protest Scam. That's what caught my attention when I seen this video. So I watched this young man's video. He was there in Chicago. And he said, I'm going to ask these people, were you paid to come here? And he found these different groups, and these people were talking with him a little bit. And he goes, where are you from? And they said, from another state. We were bused here. And he goes, are you being paid? And the minute he asked a question like that, they all shut up. They all said they're not talking to him. And they told him to leave. Just go away. Well, the thing is, okay, even if you are getting paid, lie and say, no, I'm not getting paid. I mean, that's what normally crooked people do. You throw up an air of suspicion when you're like, I can't speak to you in this. And he's just an independent person asking questions. So he goes and asks these questions to these protesters, and most of them tell him they can't speak with him, or they're not speaking to him. And they started getting pretty nasty and knocking the microphone out of his hand and doing some weird stuff. And so he goes around, he asks these questions, and I will put a link to the video. Watch the video. It's quite interesting, and there's a lot of things the young man points out that raises a ton of questions to me. Now, we all remember the last election cycle when all hell broke loose. And I can't on YouTube mention terms, but the different groups that were rioting and carrying on. What has changed in the past 4 years? The reason these people were rioting, okay, I don't think any of that's different. Actually, I think it's worse. The reasons that there were these protests and burning down half of a city, and that, I don't think any of that's changed. Okay? And now you don't hear about this. And always the question, like in this young man's video, who's paying for this? Number one, because if you look towards the end of the video, after there was some rioting and arrests and all this other stuff and some mayhem. And he looked at a pile of just these signs they're carrying on. And I mean, there was a huge pile. He goes, this is the aftermath. This is what's left. This is what the city of Chicago has to pay. And he said just the police force here covering this, which usually it's probably the other, there's more than one shift of police. He goes, paying them $25 an hour. He goes, the amount of money the city of Chicago is spending just on the extra police presence, he goes, is just a financial burden to the city of Chicago. And he said, the stuff left behind. Who's paying for this? And he came up with a question. He thought some foreign entities were paying, because I guess most of the protests, and I was always curious, who's out there protesting and for what? Okay? And the thing is, I understand people protest. I understand people wish to be heard. But one thing, whenever any of these guys, this gentleman here, his name is Nick Shirley, and there's several other young guys that go out and do this. And they ask these questions, not just protesters, but a lot of them will go, who do you support in the upcoming election, Trump or Harris? And when they just ask people in the street at random, some young kid in his 20s, people figure, who the hell is he, or what the hell he's talking about, right? So they're not afraid to answer. What they get as an answer from the average person wandering down the street compared to what we're told the national polls are is a giant difference. Okay? So this points out to a lot of misinformation. These young people are going out, exercising their right of freedom of speech and just asking questions. And they're pointing out where a lot of the stuff being told to us through most mainstream media things, other than these young people who nobody really quite knows much who they are, you're seeing a difference of night and day. And this kid brought this stuff up. And then he noticed, if you watch the whole video, there's a lot of interesting things in there that's food for thought. Okay, because like I'm saying to myself, I heard the reasons during the last election cycle why everyone's protesting and this and that and everything else. And the thing is, I'm going, who's there to protest against the Democrats? Usually, last election cycle, all these people protesting are people that support the current administration. Who would be there? And again, it's all about the Israeli war, what's going on. And it's the pro-Hamas people that are pro-Palestinian, I'm sorry, I take that back, not Hamas, pro-Palestinian. And, as far as I'm concerned, that whole mess there in the Middle East, even though the United States is involved and plays a part in this, it's a mess. And it has been since 1948. Okay? There is no solution because each side wants the other gone. I've heard the opinion of Israelis, and I have heard the opinion of Palestinians. There is no negotiation with these people. Okay? In my personal opinion. I've heard both their opinions and the reasons why, and it's something we just stay out of it. Okay? I have no relatives or no connections to both the Israeli or Palestinian. I have worked with people and been associated with people or known them as friends that are both on both sides of this, both Israeli and both Palestinian. Okay? So I understand what both of them, how they both feel. And there is one common thing I can say about it. Neither side has got no room to move. In general, and generally speaking of the opinion of both sides. There are people that are more sensible on both sides that want this to stop and just want to live peacefully there. But that majority, I believe, if they're not been killed by now, is a very small portion of it. But then again, like I said, it's not my fight. And I believe the United States should not be involved whatsoever. And how this is coming in, or how this, we had it locally here when this first flared up and these protests started. We had several of them up there in Greensboro. And it went on for about 2-3 weeks. A bunch of people would gather on one main road, stand there, waving flags. I mean, quite a few of them. It wasn't just like a group of 10 people. There was a lot of people out there. And this went on for 2 or 3 weeks, and really, there were no incidents, nothing happened. The news kind of covered it, and it stopped covering it. And I guess when these people go out there, and this is the key with these demonstrations, some point I'm going to bring up. I believe these people go out there and everybody went about their business, and after a while, the news didn't even cover it. And it all kind of just dissipated, which was strange. Because the thing of a protest, or to stand in solidarity for an idealism or something in a public protest, no matter where it is or what you're doing, okay, you want your opinion heard. Now this is the key when this kid was asking these people, because who he was. He wasn't a certain news group, or he wasn't going to promote this with a slant. He's just asking a question. And these people would not speak to him. Okay, the whole idea is, if I got an issue, no matter what it is, political, say I don't like the fact they increase postage stamps. Okay, they increase the cost of mailing my bills or a letter or anything like that. I don't like this. I'd like to protest this. I'd like to say this is wrong. Well, if I go to a protest for this, and anyone asks me, a person, a kid with a microphone, whatever, what are you here for? Hey, I don't like this. I'd like them to back off on the cost. The cost is becoming too much. Okay? Just using that as an example. I wouldn't tell them, well, who are you? I can't talk to you. Okay? Granted, a lot of political situations, I guess they're all afraid they'll be identified, but, the thing is, if I believe in something well enough, I don't care if they identify me. All right? I'm there to be heard. And then you ask the people, what are you protesting? They won't say. Then they say, go away. And then there's several of these fellas, there's a couple other videos if you look it up. They go to these protests and these people shove them away or cover them up and all this other stuff. Well, what are they hiding? My question is, what are you hiding? If you're there to protest something and someone asks you that's recording it and broadcasting it to get this out in the media, social media or the internet, I want to be heard. That's why I go to a protest. So it's kind of suspicious that these people do not want to be listened to, do not want to say anything to certain individuals recording this. Sounds kind of fishy to me. Something ain't right. Now, I will say one thing. In this video, when he goes around, he does run across people. Okay, I think he was kind of looking at suspicious groups and the way they're behaving. But he does interview people that honestly, there are people there to protest. So, an opinion, whatever, the situation or reason. And when he asks them, they will tell him, I'm here because I support this, or I support this reason, and I came here to protest. And granted, these people are just there. Some of them may have a sign, some of them are just there to show their support for the cause. But they're not people screaming on a megaphone, flinging bricks, or when the police say, hey, disperse. Okay, these people that he's talking, you don't see them shoving against police with riot shields. Okay? So there are individuals, for whatever reason the protest is, that are truly there as peaceful citizens to express their point of view. but the number of people that fit into that category are pretty, from the huge crowd there, that's a pretty small group. And another strange thing in this video, he points out that there was a group of these people wearing these weird green ball caps, and they were taking notes, and he kind of went up to see what they were doing, and they're taking down the names, age, and stuff of the people being arrested, because whatever this mysterious organization is, and when he questioned them, they didn't say a word. They told him, get away from me, stand back. So who is sending these people out? They wear like a clear marker. They're writing all this stuff down. He goes, they're sitting there, it's the weirdest thing. They're all writing this down. These people contact someone and bail these people out of jail. Immediately, there's something. And then there's these other people that wear fluorescent vests, and they are some kind of protest managers or group managers, and he was asking the cop, who is that? He goes, these people are there, they're identified with the vest, to control the group that came together. And he asked the cop, do they have authority to tell me to get out of the way or physically push me? Which he showed what they were doing was telling him to get out. He goes, they have the authority to do it? And see, then there's this thing where the cops saying, well, they're here to control their group. And the guy's asking him, do they have the authority to shove me off of a public sidewalk or whatever, and and the cop basically told him, not really, get out of the way or whatever. That's the police's job. So there's a lot of strange things going on here, okay? And it's time to kind of pay attention. I will put a link to this young man's video in the description box there, and that's all it'll be in there. But that's my opinion on it. And, going back to the other riots in the last election cycle, again, who's financing these things? Okay? And there's a weird bunch of rumors, which shows you how the deep state kind of runs everything. Is a lot of the protests and different organizations, I'm not going to mention them, but we all know who they are. They found that their funding came from the German version of the CIA, the military intelligence, was sending the money to fund them. Now with all the protests in England, they had a guy in there saying these people that were instigating and starting the violent protests where there was rioting and burning and that. The strange thing is, this fellow there that said he analyzed it, heard a rumor, that the funding for the rioting in England, the source of the money comes from some sort of intelligence agency in the United States. So is the deep state using the series of different military intelligence organizations and the super secret shit to illegally move money to fund these instigators and stuff in all these different countries? It's like a well-organized global thing. It's kind of like when you want to start an insurrection. Say you wanted to start a military insurrection or a coup in a country. What you would do is take weapons, and what this government did is we would capture Russian and foreign-made weapons, and we would give them to the people we wanted to covertly overthrow a government. So when there was any type of UN investigation or any type of investigation in this, they weren't carrying U.S. equipment, U.S.-made ammo, or U.S.-made weapons. That's why our government stockpiles and accumulates all these weird foreign-made weapons of war, and then covertly gives them to them, because much like back when the Sandinistas and all that stuff in Central America, a lot of these communist guerrillas, were carrying M16 rifles. And when Soldier Fortune magazine, if any of you guys remember that, when they went down there and did an investigation, they went to the local police and were allowed to examine the weapons that the opposing side or terrorists or whatever had. And when they seen the different weapons, they wrote down the serial numbers. And every single M16 rifle that was found there, when they checked with the government records, was a combat loss in Vietnam. Okay, so God knows how many of them guns we left behind or were left there or lost. Okay, that's where these rebels or terrorists were being given our abandoned equipment. Okay, so food for thought. Alright, I hope you liked the discussion, and like me, I'm going to sit down, enjoy a glass of wine, smoke a cigar while America still exists and I'm still a free man, and kind of enjoy the time I have left. Alright? Hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll get a couple more of these videos bringing up a lot of these interesting topics on current events.